Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Christy, and I'm glad to have you all here with me today. Sorry I didn't go live yesterday. I actually fell and hit my head and may have a concussion. I don't know, but I wasn't feeling up to it yesterday. I tried a few times to get myself up to do it, and I just couldn't. So, that's also why I look like I do today. So, anyway, I know a lot of people out there are making the connection between BK and BTK because he studied under the professor that did the book on BTK. And I have researched BTK very thoroughly for a research project, speech that I had to give, presentation I had to give when I was in college. And I thought I would just share my thoughts with you, and any excuse to talk about BTK, I'll take it. I just wanted to point out some of the similarities, and not everybody, like, I think most people have a general idea of who Dennis Rader BTK is, but I wanted to just add some video clips in here to give you a better feel of the man. And I have a few clips of the professor Ramsland and her talking about him, and then a couple clips of, just to give you an idea of what type of teaching BK may have gotten under her that I found interesting. If you don't, you can fast forward through those clips. So I lost a few followers. I don't know if it's because I didn't go live yesterday. I don't know if it's because I don't jump on every nugget until I vet it, but it is what it is. What I'm talking about is the other night it came out, there was a female prisoner who had been in the same jail as BK. And when she got released, she was talking to the media, and she was talking about how he was acting all erratic and singing like violent song lyrics, saying, you know, to the guards, I guess, like, if you come in here, I'm going to cut you, and exposing himself and things like that. And immediately I said, I don't buy it. And just based on descriptions that people that knew him or know him now, it just didn't fit what I'd been hearing about BK. And also his public defender had come out and said that he was calm. It just didn't make sense to me. I figured she might have just been trying to get her 15 minutes or whatever. And so as the night went on, my husband and I were watching TV, and I clicked over to YouTube to see if there was anything that I hadn't seen. And I said, wow, everybody's really jumping on that. And he said, what? And I said, that statement that I told you about that prisoner talking about BK. And I said, they're jumping on it, they're running with it. And I'm like, I'm just not. And so we went to sleep that night, got up next morning, lo and behold, it's been debunked. It was apparently mistaken identity. What happened, but it was a different prisoner that was doing it, basically. So when things like that happen, I'm glad that I don't jump on them right away, that I do trust my judgment that something's off. And sometimes I will bring you things and say, you know, I don't know if this is true. I don't know, but if it feels like it could be, then we'll talk about it. But when I really feel like it's not, I'm not going to jump on here and run with it just because everybody else is. And there's plenty of other channels for you to watch that on. And that's fine. I mean, if you want to hear about those kind of things, by all means, go and watch it on other subscribers' channels. I mean, there's plenty of us out there covering basically the same thing. So, while I do want to grow the channel, I'm not going to be devastated when I lose a few here and there for whatever reason. So, let's dive in to why we are all here today. And that is there a connection? And we don't know yet for sure if BK has talked with BTK. There is a chance that he may have been in communication with him. As you will hear in a clip later in the video, Ramsberger is Ramsberger. I'm sorry, that is not her name. Ugh. The professor is still in contact. I've got Berger on my mind. Ramsland is still in contact with him. Even after writing the book, they've been in contact for 11 years and they talk weekly. So through her, he definitely could have gotten in touch with and communicated with BTK. Absolutely. And she's not giving any media interviews, and she will likely be called as a witness because she was his professor, and because of her vast knowledge of killers, serial killers particularly. And if there was any communication between him and BTK, she's probably the one that would know. I'm going to play a clip here. You probably hear Steve in the background. I don't know why he's yelling. His soap opera's on, but it is what it is. I'm going to play this quick video of Brian Enton talking to BTK's daughter and how she's feeling about the whole situation.
Yeah, she said she has literally been sick to her stomach ever since she found out that there could possibly be a connection here. She's been following the situation in Idaho very closely. And now there is this chilling connection between BTK and Bryan Kohberger. Basically, Bryan Kohberger's professor at DeSales University here in Pennsylvania, when he was studying criminology, wrote the book, you mentioned it on BTK, actually wrote BTK's autobiography and interviewed him extensively to write this book, and then taught a class that we believe Kohberger took on serial killers that was heavily focused on BTK. So was he perhaps inspired by BTK? We don't know the answer to that yet, but certainly that is something that the FBI is going to be looking into. BTK's daughter spoke to me also just about what it was like having a psychopath father and the way that these killers are able to act one way around their family and seem so normal, but have this devious side to them. Listen to part of our conversation.
After being raised by a psychopath, I do know that they can hide very easily, that they can put on several masks and basically change how they're interacting with you, mimic you. Basically, a lot of times they're saying to you what they think you want to hear. So I would assume Kohberger held himself in a certain way in a professional educational setting. I'm kind of shocked how far he's made it into the criminology fields. But it's happened before. My father has a criminal justice degree. D'Angelo, Golden State Killer, he has one. Bundy, I believe, studied criminal law. So it happens. I mean, you can be an expert on psychopaths and they're still going to trick you. And honestly, somebody like Kohberger probably found that thrilling.
And Dr. Catherine Ramsland, the expert that she's talking about there, who was the professor of Bryan Kohberger and also wrote the book on BTK, really one of the preeminent experts on serial killers. And what's just so chilling, Natasha, is to think about that she was teaching Kohberger, and that this all has now played out the way it has. We've tried to talk to her. Basically, she is saying right now that she is not doing any media interviews on Kohberger. You would assume that she will likely be some kind of witness if and when this all finally goes to trial, Natasha.
Yeah, his entire course of study, making this particularly interesting and chilling, I think is the right word. Bryan Enton live for us this evening. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's dive into these two. And BTK, he's by no means the only one that BK may have taken lessons from. Let's just put it that way. Another one that comes to mind for me is, of course, Bundy. They even look kind of similar, which makes me nuts, but you know, I feel like there's a lot that I can see between BK and Bundy as well. So this is BTK, and then of course we know this is BK. And I want to start off with this quote. Let's see how I move this up here a little bit. So this was written, these words were written by BTK. And the quote is, "They all got caught except the Ripper. Could I become a killer and not get caught?" And to me, this quote, I feel like, sums up BK. And let me say, he's not guilty until proven in a court of law, so maybe BK didn't do it, but if it was BK, I feel like he could have been thinking something similar, that he had studied the masters of this, basically, and he learned how BTK got taken down and thought something similar. Well, they all got caught. Can I do this and be the one that doesn't get caught? So just thinking back on that quote, like I said, I feel like it kind of, to me, sums up possibly what BK's mindset was. I've said it before. I feel like if he hadn't been caught, he would have done this again and again, probably. So BTK, he wrote this, he said this, and he was really close to doing what he wanted. You know, he wanted to emulate Jack the Ripper, and he was so close to kind of being the elusive boogeyman of the modern era, right? Kind of like Jack the Ripper is. And he messed up, though, and he did get caught. So let's kind of get into what he did, how the downfall, I guess, of BTK. Big thing about BTK was he was addicted to his notoriety. He actually gave himself the nickname BTK, which stands for Bind, Torture, Kill. And that's what he did to his victims. He knew that serial killers usually got some sort of a name, and he wanted this to be his, so he gave it to himself. He didn't leave it to chance. While he was active as a serial killer, he collected news articles about the murders that he had committed. he sent letters describing his addiction to murder. He complained in one letter. I also have this quote for us. How many people do I have to kill before I get a name in the paper or some national attention? So initially he was upset. He wasn't getting the credit for his work. They didn't know who it was. And the second murder, you know, still nothing like linking it to him. And he was getting mad that they weren't making the connection. And so he starts sending letters like to the media and the police and everybody like, hey, I'm the one that did this, you know, when are you going to start talking about it? His self-obsession was his downfall. After murdering his final victim in 1991, he resumed his normal family life. At that point, the BTK case appeared to be set to go cold forever. And it may have. I mean, in light of technology now, with that being such a big case, if it had gone cold, I think eventually it would have been looked at again with new technology and probably would have been solved similar to the Golden State Killer. But if he had not done what he did next, the world may have never known who BTK actually was. But again, he started getting hungry for attention and he started sending letters again. But now we're in a new millennium, right? You know, he starts sending these letters again, and what he had done in the past wasn't going to work anymore. He would go, like, he would write a letter and then he would copy it, and then he would copy the copy somewhere else, and then he would go somewhere else and copy that copy. So, like, you know, in case they could track down the copy machines. And the fact that he took the time to do all that makes how he was caught even more ridiculous. But thanks to new technology and BTK's need for attention, detectives were given the break they needed. He was brought down by metadata embedded within a floppy disk. And y'all, I swear, like I said, I think about what he did and how he went undetected for so long, and then how he was eventually caught. I was just like, that was so dumb. That was so dumb. So he had asked law enforcement if it would be safe to communicate via floppy disk, and he believed them when they assured him that it would be. He genuinely believed that there was some kind of mutual respect between him and the detectives. The head of the BTK task force said he couldn't get over the fact that I would lie to him. He could not believe that I didn't want this to go on forever. BTK was baffled and hurt by the police lying to him. He thought he was invincible, that he was unstoppable. And once he realized basically the gig was up, he gave a 30-hour confession. And this guy he's ice cold. He's ice freaking cold when he talks about his crimes. I don't know if any of you have seen him in court, but I'm going to play a few videos for you. I should probably put the trigger bunny up because he, in court, he describes things that he did. And it's like you're listening to somebody read a to-do list or their grocery list. To me, it's chilling. So the first video I want to play for you is him describing his first murders. It wasn't intended to be 4 people, but it ended up being 4 people, which I feel like could be the same scenario that BK found himself in. And he just kind of talks about how this all came to be and what he did. Basically, when he realized, well, there's 4 here, and now I'm going to have to kill 4 people. So I want to play that video. It's about the Otero family murders. That was his very first one in 1974. And it will give you a good taste of what a monster he is, because there's no emotion whatsoever.
All right, Mr. Rader, I need to find out more information. On that particular day, the 15th day of January, 1974, can you tell me where you went to kill Mr. Joseph Otero?
I think it's 1834, Edgemore.
All right. Can you tell me approximately what time of day you went there?
Somewhere between 7 and 7:30.
This particular location, did you know these people?
No, that's no, that was part of my, I guess my what you call fantasy. These people were selected.
All right. So you
Okay.
you were engaged in some kind of fantasy during this period of time?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, when you use the term fantasy, is this something you were doing for your personal pleasure?
Sexual fantasy, sir.
I see. So you went to this residence, and what occurred then?
Well, I had did some thinking on what I was going to do to either Mrs. Otero or Josephine, and basically broke into the house, or didn't break into the house, but when they came out of the house, I came in and confronted the family, and then we went from there.
All right. Had you planned this beforehand?
To some degree, yes. After I got in the house, I lost control of it, but it was, you know, in the back of my mind, I had some ideas what I was going to do, but I basically panicked that first day. So
Beforehand, did you know who was there in the house?
I thought Mrs. Otero and the 2 kids, the 2 younger kids, were in the house. I didn't realize Mr. Otero was going to be there.
All right. How did you get into the house?
I came to the back door, cut the phone lines, waited at the back door, had reservations about even going or just walking away, but pretty soon the door opened and I was in.
All right. So the door opened. Was it open for you, or did something?
I think one of the kids, I think the junior, or not junior, yes, the younger, Joseph, opened the door. He probably let the dog out because the dog was in the house at that time.
All right. When you went into the house, what happened then?
Well, I confronted the family, pulled a pistol, confronted Mr. Otero, and asked him to, you know, that I was there to, basically, I was wanted to get the car. I was hungry, food, I was wanted, and asked him to lie down in the living room. And at that time, I realized that wouldn't be a really good idea, so I finally, the dog was a real problem, so I asked Mr. Otero if he could get the dog out, so he had one of the kids put it out. And then I took him back to the bedroom.
You took who back to the bedroom?
The family, to the bedroom, the 4 members.
All right. What happened then?
At that time, I tied him up.
While still holding him at gunpoint?
Well, in between tying and yes. Yeah.
All right. After you tied them up, what occurred?
Well, they started complaining about being tied up, and I re-loosened the bonds a couple of times. Tried to make Mr. Otero as comfortable as I could. Apparently had a cracked rib from a car accident, so I had him put a pillow down for his head. Had he put a, I think he's a Parker or a coat underneath him. They, you know, they talked to me about, you know, giving the car and whatever money. I guess they didn't have very much money. And there I realized that, you know, I didn't have a mask on or anything. They already could ID me, and made a decision to go ahead and put them down, I guess, or strangle them.
All right. What did you do to Joseph Otero Sr.?
Joseph Otero?
Yeah,
Okay.
Joseph Otero Sr., Mr. Otero, the father.
Put a plastic bag over his head and then some cords and then tightened it.
This was in the bedroom.
Yes, sir.
Did he, in fact, suffocate and die as a result of this?
Not right away. No, sir, he didn't.
What happened?
Well, after that, I did Mrs. Otero. I had never strangled anyone before, so I really didn't know how much pressure you had to put on a person or how long it would take. But
Was she also tied up there in the
yes,
bedroom?
yeah, both her hands and their feet were tied up. She was on the bed.
Where were the children?
Josephine was on the bed and Junior was on the floor at this time.
So we're talking first of all about Joseph Otero. So you'd put the bag over his head and tied it, and he did not die right away. Can you tell me what happened in regards to Joseph?
He moved over real quick like, and I think tore a hole in the bag, and I could tell that he was having some problems there. But at that time, the whole family just went, they went panicked on me, so I worked pretty quick. I got
What did you, you worked pretty quick.
Well,
What
I mean,
did you do?
I strangled Mrs. Otero, and she went out, or passed out. I thought she was dead. She passed out. Then I strangled Josephine. She passed out, or I thought she was dead. And then I went over and put a bag on Junior's head, and then if I remember right, Mrs. Otero came back. She came back and.
Sir, let me ask you about Joseph Otero Sr. You
Senior?
indicated he had torn a hole in the bag. And what did you do with him then?
I put another bag over it, or either that or I recollect, I think I put either a cloth or a T-shirt or something over his head, and then another bag, and then tighten it down.
Did he subsequently die?
Well, yes. I didn't just stay there and watch him. Then I was moving around the room. But
All right, so you indicated you strangled Mrs. Otero after you had done this, is that correct?
now I went back and strangled her again, and that finally killed her at that time.
So this is in regards to count 2. You had first of all put the bag over Joseph Otero's head, and he tore a hole in the bag. Then you went ahead. Did you strangle Mrs. Otero then,
Okay.
or did you go
First
back?
of all, Mr. Otero was strangled, or a bag put over his head and strangled. Then I thought he was going down, and I went over and strangled Mrs. Otero, and I thought she was down. Then I strangled Josephine, thought she was down, and then I went over to Junior and put the bag on his head. After that, Mrs. Otero woke back up, and she was pretty upset and what's going on. So I came back, and at that point in time, strangled her for a death strangle at that time.
With your hands or what?
No, with a cord, with a rope. And then I think at that point in time, I redid Mr. Otero, put the bag over his head, went over and then took Junior. Before that, she asked me to save her son. So I actually had taken the bag off, and then I was really upset at that point in time. So basically, when Mr. Otero was down, Mrs. Otero was down, I went ahead and took Junior. I put another bag over his head and took him to the other bedroom at that time.
What did you do then?
Put a bag over his head. I put a cloth over his head, a T-shirt, and a bag so he couldn't tear a hole in it. And he subsequently died from that. And then when I went back, Josephine had woke back up.
What did you do then?
And I took her to the basement and eventually hung her.
All right, you hung her in the basement?
Yes, sir.
All right, did you do anything else at that time?
Yes, I had some sexual fantasies. But that was after she was hung.
All right. What did you do then?
Went through the house, kind of cleaned it up. It's called the right-hand rule. You go from room to room. Picked everything up. I think I took Mr. Otero's watch. I guess I took a radio. I forgot about that, but apparently I took a radio.
Why did you take these things?
I don't know. I have no idea. Just
What happened
Got the keys to the car. In fact, I had the keys, I think, earlier before that because I want to make sure I had a way of getting out of the house. And cleaned the house up a little bit, make sure everything's packed up, and left through the front door. And went over to their car, and then drove over to Dillon's, left the car there, then eventually walked back to my car.
All right. Now, sir, from what you have just said, I take it that the facts you've told me apply to both counts one, all of counts 1, 2, 3, and 4. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Rader.
Your Honor,
Yes.
there's one thing that needs to be corrected on that record, and that is originally, I believe, he indicated 1834 Edgemore. The address was actually 803 Edgemore.
All right, but I'd ask him if it occurred in Central County. He indicated what had happened. I don't believe the exact address.
All right, so that's BTK. Things I find interesting about it is, like I said, he talks about how things kind of got out of control. He entered through the back door. He left through the front door. Cleaning up afterwards, things like that. I find it interesting. He also mentions that the senior Otero had a cracked rib and was uncomfortable, so he gave him a pillow and a coat to lay under him so he would be more comfortable. Now, he does that in quite a few of his murders. There's one, I want to say it was maybe his 4th kill. I'm not absolutely certain. But the woman, he had a cigarette with her and she threw up, and he cleaned her up and he got her a glass of water and all of this before he strangled them. And I've always found that very odd that he cared about their comfort, knowing full well he was about to kill them. That to me has always just been very unusual. He never thought of these people as people, is why it fascinates me. He had projects. He called them his projects. So, I think, and most killers probably do this, they dehumanize their victims to make this possible. They're no longer people, they're objects, right? But at the same time, why would you care about their comfort? And that kind of just lends a whole different level of depravity to him. And I'm going to play this next video. It's just a short clip. It's not as long as the last one. Of him describing his projects and how he found people. And I feel like this could be a similar scenario as BK.
Raider, we will now turn to count 5. In that count, it is claimed that on or about the 4th day of April, 1974, in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you unlawfully killed Catherine Bright maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation and stabbing, inflicting injuries from which she did die on April 4th, 1974. Can you tell me what occurred on that day?
Well, I don't know how to exactly say that. I had many, what I call them projects. They were different people in the town that I followed, watched. Kathleen Bright was one of the next targets, I guess, as I would indicate.
How did you select her?
Just driving by one day, and I saw her go in the house with somebody else, and I thought that's a possibility. There was many places in the area, College Hill, they're all over Wichita. But anyway, it just was basically a selection process. Worked toward it. If it didn't work, I just move on to something else. But my kind of person, it's stalking and scrolling. You go through the trolling stage and then a stalking stage. She was in the stalking stage when this happened.
All right, sir. So you identified Catherine Bright as a potential victim.
Yes, sir.
What did you do here in Sedgwick County then?
Pardon?
What did you do then here in Sedgwick County?
Well, on this particular day,
Yes.
I broke into the house and waited for her to come home.
How did you break into the house?
Through the back door on the east side.
All right, and you waited for her to come home. Where
Yes,
did
sir.
you wait?
In the house there, probably close to the bedroom. I walked to the house and kind of figured out where I'd be if they came through.
All right. What happened then?
She and Kevin Bright came in. I wasn't expecting him to be there. And come find out, I guess they were related. That time I approached him and told him I was wanted in California, needed some car. Basically the same thing that I told the Oteros. Kind of ease him, make him feel better, and proceeded to. I think I had him tie her up first, and then I tied him up, or vice versa. I don't remember right now. At that time.
Let me ask. You indicated you had some items to tie these people with. Did you bring these items, both the Oteros and to this location?
The Oteros I did. I'm not really sure on the Brights. There was some. When I was working with the police, there was some controversy on that. Probably more likely I did, but if I had brought my stuff and used my stuff, Kevin would probably be dead today.
All right.
I'm not bragging on that. It's just a matter of fact. It's the bonds I tied him up with that he broke them. So, and that,
All right.
and maybe same with Catherine. It got out of hand.
All right. Now, you indicated that you believe you had Kevin tie Catherine up. Tell me what happened then.
Okay. I moved, after, I really can't remember, Judge, whether I had her tie him up or she tied him up. But anyway, I moved her to another bedroom, and he was already secure there by the bed. I tied his feet to the bedpost, at the bottom of the bedpost, so he couldn't run. Kind of tied her in the other bedroom, and then I came back to strangle him. And at that time, we had a fight.
Were you armed with a handgun at that time also?
Yes, I had a handgun.
What happened when you came
I
back?
actually had two handguns. When I started strangling, either the parent broke or he broke his bonds, and he jumped up real quick like. I pulled my gun and quickly shot him. I hit him in the head. He fell over. I could see the blood, and as far as I was concerned, I thought he was down and was out, and then went and started to strangle Catherine. And then we started fighting because bonds weren't very good, and so back and forth we fought.
You and Catherine?
Yeah, we fought. And I got the best of her, and I thought she was going down, and then I could hear some movement in the other room. So I went back, and Kevin, no. I thought she was going down, and I went back to the other bedroom where Kevin was at, and I tried to re-strangle him at that time. And he jumped up, and we fought, and he at that time shot me because he got the other pistol that was in my shoulder here. I had my Magnum in my shoulder. So,
In shoulder holster? Did you have it in a shoulder holster?
Yes, and I had the Magnum in my shoulder holster. The other one was a 22. And we fought at that point in time, and I thought it was going to go off. I jammed the gun, stuck my finger in there, jammed it. And I think he thought that was the only gun I had, because once I either bit his finger or hit him or something got away, and I used the 22 and shot him one more time. And I thought he was down for good that time.
All right, so you shot him a second time?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
Went back to finish the job on Catherine, and she was fighting. And at that point in time, I'd been fighting her, and then I heard some. I don't know whether I was basically losing control. The strangulation wasn't working on her, and I used a knife on her.
You say you used a knife on her.
Yes.
What did you do with the knife?
I stabbed her. She said either stabbed 2 or 3 times, either here or here. Maybe 2 back here and 1 here, or maybe just 2 times back here.
You were pointing to your lower back and your
underneath the ribs.
And your lower abdomen.
Yeah, underneath the ribs, up underneath the ribs.
So after you stabbed her, what happened?
Actually, I think at that point in time, well, it was a total mess because I didn't have control on it. She was bleeding. She went down. I think I just went back to check on Kevin, or at that basically same time I heard him escape. It could be one of the two. But all of a sudden the front door of the house was open and he was gone. And I tell you what I thought. I thought the police were coming at that time. I heard the door open. I thought, no, that's it. And I stepped out there, and I could see him running down the street. So I quickly cleaned up everything that I could and left.
All right, now, Mr. Rader, you indicated that at the Oteros you did not have a mask on. Did you have a mask on at the Brights?
No, I didn't.
All right, so what happened then?
I already had the keys to the cars, and I thought I had the right key to the right car. I ran out to their car, and I think it was a pickup out there, and I tried it, didn't work, and at that point in time, he was gone, running down the street. I thought, yeah, I'm in trouble. So I tried it, didn't work, so I just took off, went east, and then worked back toward the WSU campus where my car was parked.
All right, so you had parked your car at the Wichita State University
Yes, sir,
campus?
on the campus,
How far away was the Brights residence?
Oh, I parked, what is that, 13th? And they were on 13th. Was it 17th? Yeah. I was just about one block south of 17th where the car was. There's a park there. I parked by that park, and then I walked to 13th to the Brights residence. So I basically ran back.
All right, so you were able to get to your car and get away.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, oddly enough, he went to WSU, which was Wichita State University, and BK goes to WSU, Washington State University. So, with him thinking he was invincible and unstoppable, he did what a lot of killers do, communicated with the media and law enforcement. And while a lot of them do it, it's not because they want to get caught. A lot of people are like, did he want to get caught? No, they don't want to get caught, but it's because they believe they never will get caught. They think they can do this and never be caught, even though they are making contact. It's another way for these guys to seek to exert control over the narrative, their own narrative, to build their own mystique, to create their own brand, if you will. He sent letters, postcards. He had cereal boxes, like serial killer. He would put like Barbie dolls bound in the manner of his victims to represent his victims. Like he had one with a little piece of like a pipe with a Barbie doll hanging from it that was supposed to be little Josephine from the first video hanging from a pipe. He would put that in cereal boxes and then leave them around different places. So he actually he made a 911 call for one of his kills. He went to a payphone and he called it in. I believe it was Nancy Fox, but yeah, he tried to disguise his voice, but yeah, he actually made a 911 call on his own attack. So Bryan, BK, he very well could have been in the Facebook groups, on Twitter, on Reddit, 4chan, what have you. And it seems as if there have been some posts that have been attributed to him. Specifically, I'm talking about Reddit. There's others out there like 4chan and stuff, but these ones on Reddit, I find very interesting. They did link back to one of his email addresses. The username was Outside Looking, and we know he's been described as wanting to be like the smartest person in the room, wanting you to know how smart he is and that he's right, and whatever, you're thinking is probably not right. So let's take a look at some of these. So he claimed on Reddit that Xana and Ethan were first. that he came in and out the back sliding door, that the targets were Xana and Maddie only. He took the knife back with him and it didn't break. He had no cuts on him. He parked behind the house in that parking lot. He's tired of running from LE. It's not fun. He was satisfied with the number 4. Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee. He confirms the blood leaking outside. It was Xana's. He confirms with coroner that all 4 were sleeping. Single blade used on all 4. He checked law enforcement websites if they had a person of interest. Why didn't he have wounds? Design prevents it. Assuming he meant the design of the weapon. Sliding door was left open after entering and leaving, made it easier for an escape. He said law enforcement took the handle off the sliding door for DNA. He said again that he did not have injuries. He said that Ethan was found in bed, not sure before or after. He said that everyone is capable of murder. Being convicted of murder is a separate thing. See, thought he wouldn't get caught. And that he entered the sliding door at 3:20. And then a few more. Let me take my bunny down for a second. He said it happened after law enforcement was in the field with the drunk students. He did everything in discreet fashion. Those were his words. Not sure what he meant by this, but he said downstairs bathroom was used for taking dumps. Kaylee was his last victim. He did not find Xana's room by accident. Ethan was not in a hallway. Kaylee was never a target. And he said again, Xana and Maddie were targets. So it's all very interesting, especially if it ends up that this was him. Kind of putting a trail out there for us and law enforcement, thinking that everybody would be too stupid to put it all together. So, like I said, BTK made one stupid mistake. He brought the floppy disk to his church computer because his home computer was broken. Police knew through the metadata that the disk had been used at Christ Lutheran Church by someone named Dennis. Through a quick internet search, Ellie learned that Dennis Rader was the president of his church's congregation. From security footage, police knew BTK had dropped off the last batch of his packages, which are the cereal boxes I was talking about, in a black Jeep Cherokee. Guess what exact vehicle was parked in Dennis Rader's driveway? Black Jeep Cherokee. Okay, I'm gonna play this video. This is the professor and author of the BTK book. She's on a podcast called Cocktails and Cocktails, and it has Sean Sticks Larkin. Shout out to Sean Sticks Larkin. He is from Tulsa. He is a former law enforcement officer. You may know him from Live PD. Let me play that for you real quick and go see what's wrong with Steve.
You know, the typical serial killer, just as you're describing right there, was the BTK killer. And you did
Yes.
do, you said you had conversations with him and so forth. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've known him for 11 years now. We spent 5 years working on his, what I call a guided autobiography. That is, he wanted to tell his story. I wanted it to be useful for criminology, psychology, and law enforcement. So I guided him toward thinking about things that we would find useful. So yeah, 5 years though was quite a. I wouldn't have guessed it would take that long, but it did.
And did he go into detail going through? I mean, obviously, I'm sure his upbringing, but did he cover how many murders was he convicted for? 10, 12, something like
10,
that? 10?
10,
Did he go through even talking about those, each of those murders or why he did it?
Everything in detail, yeah. And the one that he had anticipated committing just as had got arrested, he already had one in mind. It was going to be the worst of all of them. But yeah, in detail.
Okay, so share that with us. What was his gateway? What was the final thing that made him go, okay, I'm going to start killing people?
Well, in part, and this actually goes back to that theory of the golden age of serial killers, the sexually compelled serial killers that we spend a lot of media energy on. A lot of them have talked about those true detective magazines in the 1950s and 60s of scantily clad, bound, terrified women that they fixated on. He's one of those. When he was 14, he found a magazine under the the driver's seat of his dad's car, and as he's developing into a sexual person, he's devouring these magazines. He already had been binding himself, and it was feeling good to him. So bondage, that image of a terrified woman, his desire to dominate women because women had humiliated him, and his desire to be famous. And he saw on these magazines stories about H.H. Holmes and Harvey Glattman and people like that. And then he saw all the media attention to Ted Bundy and some of the 70s serial killers, and he wanted that too. So his fantasy life is what propelled him. He was thinking all about these things and imagining himself as one of those elite serial killers. And so when he saw a woman and her daughter walking, and he followed them home, and he looked at the house, and he already had envisioned himself in this kind of spy James Bond way. So he decided just to go do it. Let's try it. And right before then, he had already been breaking into houses, and he had tried to abduct somebody in a parking lot. That had failed. But this time he went into the house, and he took total command of the family. He killed 4 people in his first time out.
Jeez. So this just came from quixotic thinking, right? He just romanticized it. It was just like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
There's such a
He already as a child had been binding himself with ropes and hanging cats and imagining, for him, bondage was highly arousing. He had imagined trapping girls, tying them to railroad tracks. All of that was part of his fantasy life. And as he came into being a man, and at this point, he was also married. Then during his spate of murders, he had 2 children. He was the president of his church congregation. He was a competent work person. He wasn't like pick up jobs and somebody who couldn't hold down a job. He had jobs. In fact, he was installing security systems, so he knew exactly how to break into houses.
Let me ask you this about so he was married, had kids. Did his relationship with his wife, was it, is that how their sexual relationship was as well? He liked to, bound her and stuff like this, or was this a fantasy?
No,
he was able to act it out. He thought differently of her. He was able to act this out on his victims, basically.
On his victims, also he had these cutout dolls that he would take with him to work. They were little from magazines and whatnot. He stuck them on cards, and so they were his imaginary dates. And he had once approached his wife. She didn't want anything to do with it, so whatever. And he'd go off on work trips, and he'd have what he called motel parties, where he had these little Barbie dolls and things, and he'd create these elaborate bondage scenarios for himself in a hotel room.
So this first family of 4, the first victims, did he tie them up, or was it just
Yes.
Wow.
Bound them, put them in different rooms, went from room to room, choking them, and then when he had killed the parents and a little boy, he took the 11-year-old girl into the basement and hanged her. It was pretty gruesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I honestly don't know the answer. Why is he? Where did the BTK come from?
He named himself. Bind them, torture them, kill them. He put it in when he he had killed one more victim after that, and with an attempted murder on her brother. And so 9 months after his first murder, he saw that the police had picked up 3 guys that they thought were good suspects for that family murder, and he didn't like that because they were wasting his taxpayer dollars. And so he wrote a letter. That was his first communication to the police. He actually wrote it. He had a newspaper person go get it. But pretty soon he wanted to give himself a name. He wanted Wichita, Kansas to know that they had a serial killer in their presence. So he began to communicate, and he didn't want to leave his name to chance because he knew serial killers get these media names. So he named himself and basically said, you'll know it's me because here's my symbol. And out of the BTK, he made a kind of vulgar looking female form because he wanted it to be very sexualized.
So did he have sex with his victims, or was it just the fantasy of binding them, torturing them, and killing them, and then he would just masturbate, or what?
Yeah, he did not have sex with them, but he did masturbate, yes. Sometimes at the scene, sometimes later. He would take items like their slips and underwear. He would take that with him, and trophy souvenirs he'd take, and so he could relive that. Sometimes, at one point, he stole a Polaroid camera, and he took some pictures of several victims that way. Once he took a woman out of her house after he killed her, took her to his church, and he had put black plastic around the windows in the room. He'd already prepared it, and dressed the corpse in various items of underwear he had stolen from other homes, and took pictures of her posing in this. She wasn't posing because she was dead, but that's what he did.
Wow, that photo shoot would have been weird. I need you to be more natural. You're acting a little stiff.
Oh, kidding.
So during this whole time, you're interviewing him, and he's speaking, and I assume he's speaking fairly candid with you because you have a good relationship and you've actually gained his trust. Was there ever a period where you were like, hold the fuck on, I can't listen to this anymore for a few minutes, I need a break? That level of sharing is a lot for someone to take. So how did you deal with that?
Yeah, well, he partly wrote these in letters. He'd write very long letters to me describing everything. That was one thing. And on the phone, we always talked in codes because he wanted to always make sure nobody could figure out, because in prisons they're recorded. Yeah, so everything was in codes, which buffered it a little bit. But there were times, I had some good friends I would go to and say, okay, you guys need to hear this because I need to share the burden. So and they're still my friends. As a matter of fact, sometimes I just had to go talk to somebody because it became revolting.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, it's so far and this removed from humanity, I mean, that break with humanity.
Well, he would refer to his victims as projects. So that was his distancing mechanism. He gave me, even though he killed 10, he gave me a list of 55 targets with full descriptions of where they lived and how he had stalked them and what had happened and why it hadn't worked out. So he was on the move quite a lot. And he enjoyed it. But the fact that he would call them projects, and he'd name them like Project Lights Out, Project Cookie, Project Piano, that I believe helped him to objectify them and make them less than human.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It was hard for me because I didn't want to think about a 11-year-old girl being hanged from a basement pipe as just a project, because she wasn't.
Absolutely not. Well, you kind of wrap up talking about the BTK here, but his last, I guess the one he had planned that was going to be his most gruesome or, biggest one ever in his words. What was that about that, luckily never happened?
Well, he depends on what day you ask him because he's changed his story, but it was going to be like his retirement. This is in part it was he had stopped communicating with the police before the 1980s, in fact. So they weren't really sure if they were connecting all the murders. They thought they had 7. They didn't know for sure they had 10. But he seemed to have stopped in 1991 with the last one. And then all of a sudden in 2004, he came out to say, here I am, I'm still in Wichita. And he wanted then to make a big splash by killing somebody because he wanted to create terror in the whole area. But he made a mistake. He kept communicating. And then one day, what he would do is he'd copy the things he'd written and then copy the copies, and that was getting time consuming. So he asked them if he could communicate with a computer disk. Could they trace him? And they were to put in the newspaper, Rex, because that was the name of his penis.
Rex?
Rex, it will be okay.
T-Rex can't do push-ups.
Right, exactly. And he bought it and sent the disc, and they traced him and got him. And the first thing he asked was, why did you lie to me? And the head of the task force, Ken Landwehr, said, we were trying to catch you.
Yeah, exactly. Believe it or not, police, we do lie to people. It happens.
Yeah.
And he knew that. He had a master's in a BA in criminal justice. He knew that. He had classes. He had a pathologist giving a lecture on the BTK victims when he's sitting right in there watching them.
Wow.
God, I bet you he was smug as shit in that class.
Well, so
yeah.
What was this last case or this last grand idea that he had, as you said, depending on what day you spoke with him, but what did you kind of land on?
Well, he had identified a woman. He always needed people with routines because then he could plan it out and figure out when they'd be off guard and when was the easiest time. He had a very elaborate idea of all these ropes and bondage. He was going to hang her upside down, and he had stored a bunch of semen. He's going to put it all over the house and then burn the house. So how that works, I don't know. But he had a very elaborate plan for this final one because he really wanted to show I'm out here, and maybe there'll be another one after this.
Him and Rex. Okay. Well, where is he currently, and how long is he going to stay in jail?
Well, he has a life. I mean, there's no parole for him. He's in El Dorado, Kansas, and he'll be there till he dies. He's not in general population. He's in his own cell, and that's where he'll stay.
All right. So a few things from that. First of all, I think Kohberger is probably elated thinking that someday there'll be classes where they discuss him. But at the same time, we heard from people that had class with him after the murders, and they said when they would discuss it in class that he would get quiet and deadpan, and I'm honestly surprised he didn't chime in and let them know that they were wrong about certain things. Also, I wonder if after this is all said and done, if BK is guilty, I wonder if she'll write a book about him. Like, is this her next book? Oof, I don't know. But what I wanted to show you, she was talking about how BTK kind of practiced, he broke into places and things like that. And we've looked at, in previous videos, some police logs from Moscow. And I looked at the police logs in Pullman, and I'm just going to pull up a couple here that I found interesting. So on October 29th, a caller reported footprints on her windowsill and bed. Also on October 29th, about an hour before that, there was a call and they thought someone was downstairs in her basement. Officers responded and no one was found. And then 2 more. So the top one is from November 4th. The caller advised that the downstairs door was unlocked and the crawl space was open. And then on November 6th, caller reported that they left to get food, and when they came home, their front door was wide open and no one is answering. It may not be connected, but I just kind of wonder, had BK been practicing? And now I've got a couple short clips to show you things that he may have learned from this professor. Do you remember when I was talking about, I hope there's not a loophole that he can get out of, especially as far as the DNA goes? Now, if the DNA was found like under their fingernails or something, then I feel like they're good to go. But I had mentioned if his DNA was found in the house and he can somehow explain it away, like he had been there for whatever reason, that he could explain away his DNA, that I would be so mad. Well, listen to this. When she's asked about a scenario like that, listen to this.
Or what if they put DNA in a crime scene? Like, what if somebody is that a real thing that could happen? That's
Yes.
kind of scary.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Or you happen to be there, so your DNA was there. It doesn't make you the killer.
Right. Yeah. No, there's a lot of scary things like that.
I mean, right there. Just because your DNA is there, it doesn't make you the killer. It's true, but you tell someone like BK that, and he's going to be like, oh, bingo, you know? And then this is, she's explaining something that she does with her students, a lesson, teaching them about crime scenes.
And try to figure out what happened. And
I have my students do it.
oh, okay.
We set up crime scene scenarios, and the red herrings are there. The evidence is set. They have to not just observe, but think about who they are as observers psychologically. What are they? Are they the type of person who has a high need for closure, for example, so they'll jump to conclusions right away? Are they the kind of person who will look at things and in their spotlight of focus will not see other things? Like, for example, I had one where there was a guard dog in the scene. This is a real case. The dog was locked up in the garage. So even though the family was afraid, they kept their guard dog locked up. And I had two of them went through the whole house, and they go, so the dog ran away? The dog is right there. It was a big stuffed Rottweiler. It's right there, right in front of you. They didn't see it.
Wow.
They had already assumed the dog ran away, and so they did not see right in front of them. So I talk a lot about the quirks of observation and of cognition, the cognitive errors, the psychological states that can be part of an investigator. And if an investigator does not know themselves, they will miss, they'll have blind spots in the way they approach a crime. They might jump to conclusions and fail to see some of the evidence that's there. They might have confirmation bias and only see what works with the theory they're forming, the hypothesis they're forming. That's a problem. And many cases have gone off the rails for that, and innocent people convicted.
So just thinking about that he participated in crime scene scenarios with, you know, red herrings and things like that makes you wonder, did that help him in coming up with how he left the scene, like what state he left the scene in? Did he leave red herrings or anything to that effect, trying to throw off investigators? But apparently it didn't work. I'm going to do a video. It'll be a short one, probably today, about how I would like to handle talking about him going forward. It's obvious from what we know about a lot of serial killers, but especially BTK, they thrive on attention. They hunger for it, right? And I don't want to give him what he wants anymore. I don't want to give him the attention of him being so smart. You know, everybody's like, oh, he's a genius. Oh, he's smart. No, he's an idiot because he got caught. Okay, he's not as smart as maybe he's book smart, but yeah, I'm not going to stroke this guy's ego. And like I said, I'm going to make a video about that. It won't be long. But thank you guys for joining me today and just seeing where there may and may not be links between these two and what he may have learned from that professor and the things that maybe he thought he learned from BTK's mistakes, but he actually didn't. You know, I said BTK made one stupid mistake, and apparently BK made one or more as well. So, like I said, thank you for joining me. Please give this a thumbs up, share it, and if you're not already subscribed, please do so. It's free. Your likes and subscriptions are free ways to help me by promoting my channel, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you for being patient with me while I deal with everything going on around here. And as always, I will see you all in the next one.